Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another cracking edition of the Mac Brown Show. This is going to be called Hold My Beer. With me on the line from South Africa are two old entrepreneur friends of mine that have been part of the Mac Brown Show from the very beginning.
Old friends. Sorry. Old friends, not
old friends. What did I say?
Because it sounds like you're saying that we're not old friends, that we're old people.
Old.
And I get that we are old people, older than you, but both of us call foul at the same time. Like, hold on.
All right, fine. You win. Fuck it. Jeez, this is what I'm talking about. So
this is where it's going.
Right. So we don't have any particular agenda today, but we're just going to shoot the shit. We're all entrepreneurs. So let's maybe start with some intros. I guess everybody knows who I am. Brent, let's start with you. You're the $1 billion coach still. Is that still the case?
I was never the $1 billion, and you corrected it to the $1 million, which I'm okay with. Let's do this. Richard,
I'll intro Brent.
I'll introduce Richard.
I was literally going to interrupt and say the same thing. Brent is really the coach's coach. I think he's unbelievable, absolutely an incredible business coach. I say that we met with the same business coach, and then I hired Brent. Brent has been my coach through thick and thin for many years. And when I had a speed wobble in my business recently, he was the first person I phoned, and it was amazing because I remembered exactly when it is. I've also seen Brent at his worst and his drunkest. I've had to hold his beer before, lest we forget your 30th birthday party. And we have been on many snowboarding trips together. So if you are looking for somebody to help you see the wood from the trees and to really help you with your business, I can't recommend Brent enough.
Well, that was really good. Okay, I'm done. Okay, it was fun, guys. Thank you. Okay, so outside of everything Rich said, obviously similar, same holiday, same. Richard is the person that today, in fact, I speak the most often about in terms of breaking the rules around the way people think about business. Richard was the guy that had the most radical ideas of marketing, the most radical ideas of the way he presented himself to corporates, the way he sold himself. The story I told today was he had a bed in his old office, and the chirp was, I've betted more CEOs than anybody else. Right? Like the thinking has always been very radical, but practical, non-offensive. I mean, I'm sure he's offended a lot of people over the years, but in terms of like just genius thinking, he's the guy that I go to. He's solved the problems that everyone's trying to solve in the most interesting ways, always. And then I always go like, and the only other person I know who in my life that consumes and understands content and can take all the elements floating around them and create the perfect Venn diagram and talk about that perfect little vagina-shaped centerpiece, okay, is Richard. Richard has the ability to take everything floating around and make sense of it and find the sweet spot between all these weird elements floating in the environment, and then potentially turn that into a business idea. I mean, the number of conversations where I've said to Rich, bro, shiny penny, like it's a good idea, but it's a whole business. Like, please focus on the golden goose laying the egg here. Like so many great ideas and so many inspirational like thought leadership pieces. He's written a whole bunch of brilliant books, all of them unbelievable. And true to him, you read them, you go, yeah, Richard wrote this. This isn't a ChatGPT bullshit thing. This is Richard, like absolutely. And then the last thing I want to say is that I was privy to have seen Richard speak a few times on stage. And I ended up in one talk, there was a couple of thousand people in the room. And he was the last official paid speaker. And not that the others weren't bad, but the level by which everyone put their phone down and was actually focusing on the stage speaks to the fact that he had everyone's attention for the full 15, 20 minutes. It was remarkable. And to the point where my wife, who's the world's biggest critic of everybody, like everyone is a VIP, a very important protein who shits. That's her attitude, right? Like no one is important. She was like, Jesus, Richard's good, hey? Like that's validation. That's validation.
It is validation. Rich, how many views has that video of yours got now, the regret one?
It's been on a bunch of different channels. I'm not really tracked, but on Facebook it's at 21 million. So on Instagram, Goldcast actually doesn't make those videos anymore. I only found that out last week when I was in Montreal. So they don't make those kind of motivational videos. So it's actually a good thing because now they just repurpose the ones they did. So every now and then, and mostly it seems to be on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. So I'll get tagged in something and then a whole bunch more followers and things come from that. But yeah, I would probably, I don't know, probably 22 million over all the channels or something, maybe a bit more.
That's pretty
crazy. Can I just raise, I want to raise my hand here, right? One of my videos just got 50,000 views on YouTube Shorts. Now, I want to explain to you that this video is, in fact, you guys might know, Richard definitely knows, I went on a snowboard trip to Tokyo, to Japan, 10, 12 years ago. And on the train, in front of me was a lady falling asleep.
Oh,
you know, she was like,
the falling asleep one.
And I sat there taking a video. That is my most viewed video. Nothing about anything, any of the content that I've actually produced has done anything. 50,000 views.
Yeah. It's,
listen, before we go on, can I take a moment just to say thank you for that? That was beautiful. I feel like I wish you'd gone first and I would have done a better job with mine, but it means the world. And it's really, really nice to hear. So thank you. And even occasionally seeing Matt give a little nod and stuff like that. It's you know, I hold you guys in very high regard. And when you get the praise of a peer, it just hits different. So thank you so much.
No,
yeah, exactly. I don't disagree with anything Brent said. I mean, you know, like I said, Rich, you were like remember the digital kung fu show back in the day?
Totally.
Rich was the guy who basically, you know, he basically is like, I don't understand. I keep going to these EO events. People keep asking me like, what's my favorite show? And I have to say it's the digital kung fu show. And they go, what's that about? And I'm like, and he's like, just fucking rebrand the show. And that was like 9 years ago. 9 years.
And I also want to stipulate, I was around for both of your tattoo journeys. I'll never forget when I saw Richard the first time and he got the Chester Bennington flames. Let's see them, Rich. Where are the flames?
Oh,
that almost gone, right? Like when I saw them the first time, I was like, okay, you've lost your mind. What have you done to your body? You've gone crazy. And bear in mind, it's become very mainstream to get sleeves and stuff now. At the time, it was really edgy, okay? And then you, Matt, got a very similar looking tattoo. And I was like, oh, fanboy, let me see your sleeve. Not the same.
But nothing like mine. His is actually much nicer than mine. Much nicer than mine.
Yours tells a story. His is like, he walked in, he found the catalog and went, I want that one.
Well, no, I mean, in fairness, I copied Chester Bennington, right? This was a tribute, and my cats are called Chester and Bennington. This is a tribute piece. But Matt, let me see yours again. It's sick. You've worked on that a lot. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's proper, hey?
Yeah, you should see my back. I would show my back to everyone, but it's good. My whole back's done too. I
want to have a conversation about my back. My back looks like a postage stamp. I didn't think it through, and I had the design, and it kind of came to, and I don't like it because I don't think it's finished. And it's like I don't want to do another tattoo until I make my back work, and I just can't figure out what to do.
Yeah, that's true. So tell me, guys, how's business been for you guys down in South Africa? I'm always curious because I don't ever hear anything positive, quite frankly. And being in the States, I have a pretty unique perspective. And I'd love to talk about the experience that you guys are currently having down there.
Harder than it's ever been for me, bro.
Really?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think there are a few things here. The first thing is that I know Rich does a lot of work internationally as well. So there's that dynamic as opposed to just the South African dynamic. The bulk of my work is still South African based, Joburg and Cape Town. I have a handful of international clients, but they're all expats. So it's not like I've grown a large, homegrown international base. I have one or two that have come through referrals now, which are literally, born and bred New York kind of people, but majority is still South Africa. And maybe I'm placed differently. It's obviously a different business to both of you, but I found that when there's pain, what's one. In the time of famine, the grave diggers make money. Something along those lines. I've butchered that a bit, but I found that the last 3 or 4 years have been actually really good for me. I've managed to push my pricing quite aggressively. I've gone through phases where I've closed my doors for new business because I do have a capacity issue. Obviously, like I've worked out what that looks like now over the years. So from that perspective, not a problem. And then weirdly enough, the international work's been beneficial because we've, the rand has gone for a ball of shit, so we can charge more generally versus the rand, and the fact that you can just charge more internationally for similar services. So from our perspective, not bad. But then if you're asking me about my clients' business, obviously there's the spectrum of guys who've done incredibly well the last couple of years, regardless of everything that's happening, and then guys that are struggling, and then somewhere in the middle is the average. But I'd say that on average, my client base are probably all doing okay. And the big challenge is actually just talent. Like I used to spend a lot of time talking about sales. How do I get more sales? What's the marketing strategy? How do we get more business? And now everyone's going, we're turning work away because we can't find the people to do the work. And it's partly because of the black empowerment policies in the country. It's partly due to the fact that there's so much immigration of brains and money over the last 30 years, which is not being fed back into the economy. So it depends who you speak to as to how long a piece of string is. But if you had to ask me, this is my new favorite double-edged question, Billy, how are you? I go that from 30,000 foot, my life is fucking awesome. I'm doing well. I enjoy my life. I have a healthy kid and family. I get to travel. The weather's good. Like everything's great. But the 50-year-old little Jewish balding guy, everything's terrible, right? The lights don't work. We have no water in Rosebank from yesterday till 5 o'clock. Power keeps tripping. Like, so from a microaggression perspective, from like the little things that piss you off, lots of it. But actually, step away, it's not bad. So it's a difficult thing. And I think that people in my life, including myself, tend to ebb and flow on their positivity, negativity, and that varies dramatically, person to person, business to business.
Rich, what are you experiencing?
So I made a couple of big fuck ups last year. Definitely, I played some cards that we probably shouldn't have played. The funny thing is, maybe we can go into the details later, but I don't even regret doing them. Like, I think if I went back again, I'd still probably have played the same thing. It felt like the right idea at the time, but it just didn't play out the way I hoped it would play out. So we took a risk and a bet, and it didn't pay out the way we wanted to. So I feel like I'm playing catch up again. And the fuck up for me is that I feel like we're below I don't actually require much. So, I have quite a unique take on business in that I don't particularly want to grow it that much. Like, I want to be the same size I want, and I want to live a fantastic life and do meaningful work. I want to scale the impact of our business more than the size of our business. The problem is that's wonderful and easy to do, and has always been easy for us to do. We can spend all the money doing all the cool, fun stuff because there was always enough. And it just feels like for the last 6 months, we've not cracked the enough well enough. So every month I genuinely do worry, like, oh God, like, is there enough work at the moment, to pay for everything? And, it's been so long since I've been there that it becomes quite a consuming headspace, because you're thinking, instead of being able to think about the cool stuff you want to do, you've got to think about all the practical stuff that you need to do. And that's, for some entrepreneurs, that might be quite exciting and they enjoy it. For me, it's soul destroying. And it just makes me realize that we've got to change our model. Like having a project business that starts from zero every month, it's just a stupid business. I'm just exhausted with it. I still love what we do. I love the work. I love meeting with people, but it's just feeling like a bit of an effort. And again, like you all know, sometimes this is a 3-month window, 6-month period that you just have to kind of navigate through. In my case, I think it's more bitter just because I made the mistake. It wasn't my team. It wasn't anybody else. I called 2 decisions, and they weren't good ones.
What were those decisions? Are you comfortable sharing, or?
I'm very comfortable sharing. So, okay, so let's talk about the political one. So this goes back a little bit. I actually, this one I stand by. I know it's made it harder, but I totally stand by it. We turned off our BEE. We said, no, we're not doing it anymore. Enough is enough. The criteria kept on changing. We were a level 2 contributor, which for your American listeners, so in South Africa, there's certain policies that you have to, obviously we have a lot to atone for. White people in South Africa gained a lot at the expense of African people in South Africa. And so we had Black economic empowerment. For a while, though, it was called broad-based Black economic empowerment. So as a business owner, if I did preferential procurement or enterprise development, I helped young Black entrepreneurs, I did things like this, my business got a really good scorecard. I never got a good scorecard, a low score, corporates could hire me. A few years ago, they decided, no, that doesn't make any difference anymore. The only thing that matters is equity. So if you are owned, then you give away a share of your business. And the problem with this is nobody wants to give away shares of their business to a young starting entrepreneur. What you do is you give it away to a big fat cat who sits on the board of 100 businesses so that then they get you in. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What happened is we were about to do a deal that gave away 26% of the business. And then one of our big banking clients said, no, we want 51%, even though the government says 26%. And I thought, this is getting ridiculous. It was 10%, and it was 15%, and it was 26%, now it's 51%. So I decided that we're 29 years into our democracy. I'm no longer playing that game. We'll carry on doing our things. But if that means that we can't work with corporate South Africa, so be it. So we turned that off. One of our biggest clients, which was, you know, a nice, consistent $300,000 a year, went to zero overnight, and we had to accept that. And we lost, you know, there's a whole bunch of other ones like that. I actually stand by that, and we're not changing that. What we did do, though, is that made us realize that we have to build an international business. The mistake I made is as soon as the international businesses started biting, and 30% of our work now is international, I said, you know what, the South African clients need to pay the same as the international clients. And we started charging South African clients the same as we were charging American clients. And they just can't afford it. It's just, it would be lovely. And maybe one day we operate like that, but for now it's not an option. And that was a terrible mistake. The other mistake was we turned off, we knew that our old product set wasn't the product set we wanted in the future. Instead of trickling it out, I said enough, and we turned it off. So the customers we tried to sell a new product at a new price point to old customers too quickly. And I learned that you gotta buy them the drink first. So it was a stupid mistake. I look back at it, it was a fuck up. I should have done one bit by bit by bit, but you know, that's entrepreneurship, right? You take that shit on the chin.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and can I just quickly comment on that, just out of interest, is that I'm a big believer, which I think we've spoken about this in the past, but I think I'm a big believer in cyclical versus systemic problems. And you sitting somewhere between that, right? Is that part of it is that you may have 6 or 12 or 18 months of rough time behind you and ahead of you, but systemically, what you do, the world needs, like the demand hasn't gone away. You just position yourself incorrectly for a period of time or try something new. So it's a cyclical problem. It's for a period of time where I think that it's not a systemic problem where it's like we do this and the world no longer needs it, because then you get a different problem. So I'm not, from where I sit, it doesn't sound like you're going to be closing your business anytime soon. You just got to re-engineer it back to something where the market adopts it again.
Totally. And the market has adopted it, but we have to catch up such a shortfall that even we have we have record-breaking months like we had 2 months ago. And then you sit and you look at it and you think, oh, yeah, that's not that great. It just means that we've caught up more. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, it's not supposed to be a sob story. It's just a reality check. This is just what it is. I made a mistake. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I want to ask.
Sorry.
I want to know about Matt because Matt's obviously left the country and he understood everything about this country, and then he's new ground, knew everything. And I'm curious to understand what that's been like from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, the family. Like, how's it been?
Well, it was 1 year last week. So it's
wow.
Happy birthday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been tough. But I was chatting to my wife about this the other day. I think what we built for ourselves in 12 months, it would take 5 years in South Africa. So like everything works here. There's electricity, water, everything is just very, very, very efficient.
How did you land in the city? Just we can go a step back.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know that was a challenge.
Yeah, so basically, I don't know if you remember Marco Bricado. Does that ring a bell? So anyway, so he was on my show when I was still using Gareth Cliff's studios. And anyway, he moved to the US and I said, hey, like, how did you get there? And he's like, no, there's this visa called, it's like a person of extraordinary ability. So I'm like, cool. So I did some investigation, spoke to the lawyer and that, and basically I sent, 12 signed letters from CEOs, a dozen magazines. I sent all the data from the show, like 100 countries around the world, blah, blah. And remember, the show was at its height, I think, back then. And basically applied, and I got the green card. So it's not a visa, it's a green card. So I have right to remain. I can become a US citizen in 3 years. So having said that, then COVID happened and everything shut down. And so digital kung fu was going on, and that was exploding at the time. And then I tried to offload the thing. And I remember chatting to Elon Reyes, and I said, I've got my green card for the States. What should I do? And he said, sell it. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not selling it. We're doubling revenues every year. We're cleaning up, like we keep growing, whatever. And he's like, cool. Well, what makes you so sure that it will survive without you? Anyway, I wish I'd listened to him, because I'd be a much wealthier man. And so basically we eventually moved to the States, and I had a management team in there. COVID had happened, and basically, long story short, it couldn't run without me. So I had to dissolve the company, which still hurts to this day, because it was a great business. But in that preceding year, I was trying to sell it, but you can't sell a business when your revenues drop in one quarter. If you have a hockey stick graph and it stays there, then you can sell it. But as soon as it goes down, acquirers, just like, they will leverage everything they can to tell you that you're not worth selling. And then, of course, when they say, what are you going to do? And I'm like, no, I'm going to the States. They're like, fuck that. We want you to stick around. So it was a bit of a shit one, because we went to Austin, Texas first, but it was so hot there. It was like frighteningly hot. Like, I didn't actually think that I'd find a place in the US that would be hotter than Africa. And trust me, it's hotter. But it was just too hot. Like, you couldn't go, like, it was horrible. So I was like, nope. And we had friends here in Denver, in Colorado, and they said, well, why don't you come, spend 5 days with us? But I knew in my heart and in my soul, like, it was always going to be Colorado. And so I just needed to sell it to my wife, which I did when we landed, and that was that. And so, so on one hand, the business was dying. It was when a business dies, people don't understand that it's not you, it's just a business, and you can't get paid anymore, but you're the one that takes all the shit. I got a lot of heat on social media. I haven't been on social media for over a year. I haven't published one fucking post, nothing. And you guys know how aggressive I am with content. And then we didn't have a home. So it was a very tough time. It was, I would say, probably one of the hardest things to go through when you're trying to rebuild your life. And on one hand, but on the other hand, you have this massive dark cloud hanging over you. And that hurt, man. That sucked. And a lot of people, it was a big business, and a lot of people went out of work, and how important that is for us as entrepreneurs being in South Africa. Like, unemployment rate rather, is like, what, 56%, 60%, something like that. Anyway, but then it was about the US. And one of the things that I lost was my network. And I do believe that your network is your net worth. But I did have the show. And so I went and I sent like 1,600 emails out to startups who had raised $1 million in the last 12 months. And I'm like, come onto the show for an interview. Went to bed, woke up.
Sorry, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
You found 1,600 startups that had each individually raised $1 million or more.
Oh, there's more than that. There's 12,000.
No, I'm saying, but you found 1,600. I mean,
yeah.
It just speaks to the scale versus the South African landscape.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
You
those
don't
numbers
understand.
are staggering.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I'm going to address to what Rich was going through. But so I went to bed, woke up the next morning, and I had literally 6 weeks blocked out, just interviews. And that was how I started to build my network, and then started to meet these amazing CEOs and founders and stuff like that. And in South Africa, in the whole of Africa, there's 100 startups that have raised $1 million or more in the last 12 months, 100. In the US, there's 12,000. So it's a massive, massive market. And the other thing that you don't know is, well, how much do you charge for stuff? And I learned very quickly to increase prices by 1,000%. So what you think is your ceiling, times that by 1,000, and you're probably in the middle somewhere. The amount of capital you can generate through services, speaking, coaching, you can literally 10x your revenue. Having said that,
go ahead. Or just as a data point, my speaking fee is 4 times the price in the US. And in South Africa, I'm expensive at the South African rate, and in the US, I'm cheap at the US rate. The economy is it's just a fundamentally different economic position.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so I keep increasing prices because I haven't found a ceiling yet. I have, like, you know what I mean?
What is the business? So what are you
Wait.
selling?
Hold on a second. Before we get to the business, we've got a cliffhanger. You went to bed. You sent 1,600 emails. You went to bed.
Yeah. And then woke up the next morning and I just had can't even remember. It was like 6 weeks of interviews, solid every day, Monday to Friday, nonstop podcasting. I did about 170 episodes in about 6 weeks.
Woo.
Yeah. And then a lot of the guys became my clients. And then I'm like, oh, fuck. So now you can actually use podcasting as a lead generation tool. And so now I have a portfolio of clients that I met all through my show, every single one. And so I've got a very clever way to open up relationships with people. Obviously, it's taken a decade of work, but the story around the show is so compelling. Like I can open up a conversation with anyone. It's amazing. Like so a lot of them said, listen, can you help us raise money? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't know how to raise money. I don't have a venture capital network. So then I did a private placement perspective series and I interviewed a whole bunch of venture capital guys. I got access to more capital than I know what to do with. I've had a number of guys come to me and say, like, do you need money? You know, what are you building? I'm like, fuck, I'm not that guy. I'm like rich, rather impact than scale. And so it's just been a really powerful network building tool, this show, as much as it is one about content. So the business.
Can I just say that's fucking inspiring, man?
Oh, thanks.
Amazing.
To get to where you got to, literally to keep your head up, to rebuild like that, it's phenomenal. Like it's one of these things people take for granted. Sorry, I'll fix this stupid microphone because of your background.
Don't worry.
It's one of these things that I think it's sometimes hard. Like I don't think you realize how extraordinary it is, and it's amazing, man. So stoked for you. Well done. Fuck.
Yeah, it was hectic. I remember sitting at my desk one day and I just basically broke. My sister was here. And it was very early. We'd just found the home, you know, and I was like, fuck, now I have this massive mountain of having to rebuild everything from business, my life, my friends, my lifestyle, everything just went up in smoke literally overnight. And so it was tough, dude. But, you know, like you have to persevere through those things. And, you know, and like, I just wished I had someone to phone, you know what I mean? It was kind of a hard thing. Like I couldn't phone Brent, couldn't phone Rich. It didn't feel, I could, but didn't feel like it like that, you know? So I felt pretty isolated. But
it's where things like EO are great, right?
Fuck, very hardcore. But you know, things turned around pretty quickly. And then I started adding clients, and then I just went on this massive pivoting mission, trying to figure out how best to package what I do, what I'm offering and whatever. And then just price testing, keep increasing. And then eventually it's like, oh, fuck, how much have you done in the first 6 months this year? You know? And it's like, fuck, I would have done that in South Africa. And so it's still early days, but the business is called Showworks Media. We're in the influence business for CEOs. So my clients are CEOs. These guys are running companies usually around between 10 and 50 million. My biggest client does 4 billion a year. And so these are big boys. But so I'm selling influence. And so influence is a very powerful thing. So if you think about that story around the 1,600 startups, influence is why I built such an amazing network so quickly, because I have the show, and the show is an influence platform as much as it is a personal brand one. And so what I now do is I help CEOs to become influentials. So influencers in their chosen market. We do media platforms for them. So basically there's a whole bunch of content shit that I've come up with, but it's like thought leadership, media platform stuff. We're helping them to become best-selling authors. We're doing what we're calling destination micro conferences. And it's working. Like I've got, and by the way, all the stuff that I sell, I'm using myself. So as an example, I've been running a series called Secrets of Fail, which I've had huge response to. And so the questions are pretty formulaic. It's like, it's always the same 5 things. I'm not having this sort of a conversation. So it's cool to do this sort of thing again. But now I've got a book coming out at the end of this month called Secrets of Fail. And it's based on interviews I've done with these guys with these massive companies that have just had epic failures, like lost millions, lost businesses, blah, 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 and all the things that they've learned from that. And so my intention is to do the same thing as I've always done, which is to make a difference, with the show. And so just packaging up as a book. And then, Rich, I was going to reach out to you because what I want to do is actually do a keynote around failure, because I was chatting to this guy. He runs a $3 billion a year business. Name escapes me. But he said to me, and it sparked the idea, because I was
you're doing well when you can forget people. Yeah. Sure, he does 3 billion. Yeah. His name escapes me. You're doing well. I remember all the people I know who've done 3 billion.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, I'm terrible with names.
No.
So,
Yeah, me too.
And I do so many interviews. It's actually embarrassing. I should really.
But this is why Zoom's great, right? The name is on the screen.
Yeah. So he said to me, he did a book with Forbes called Overcoming FUD. So Overcoming Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt. And he had 30 of his vice presidents, was telling me this off air. But he had 30, it's probably a good thing I didn't mention his name, but he had 30 of his vice presidents in a room. And, you get that anonymous thing when you can say, like, how are you feeling about X? And then everybody says their shit and it all comes up in a word cloud, but it's all anonymous. And the words were fear, anxiety, doubt, anger, frustration. And he said it was such a revealing thing where he said, how can 30 of my vice presidents in a $3 billion a year company be feeling about these things this way? And if we could remove these things, then wouldn't we be a better team, a better business? So that's the premise for what I want to do off the back of the book, which is to, go into companies, do keynotes and that kind of stuff, and just share the knowledge that I've gained through talking to, CEOs in the space and, helping them overcoming their own shits, basically.
I have all the questions, right? So the first thing I want to understand is, I have this, and it's not a personal experience belief, but I have a belief that South Africans are smart, hardworking, very entrepreneurial, quite self-sustaining. Like, there's a whole bunch of character traits that I think South African business owners have, right? And for a bunch of reasons why I believe that. Do you think that mentality is what, outside of your own personality and your own drive, right, and need to produce money, do you think that South Africans have a higher propensity for success in other countries than maybe other foreign immigrants because of the way we're wired as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's 100% true. I went for lunch with one of the guys, Spencer, runs a startup, raised like 10 million. Like, the numbers are just ridiculous. And so we went to lunch and I was telling him about BEE. He was literally, his jaw hit the table. He was like, what? You give away equity to your, what? Why? And then I was like telling him about the electricity and how that goes off for like 8 hours a day and how then your whole business can't operate. No internet, no cell phone, no nothing. He couldn't believe it. And then the tax rates are so much higher. To your point, Brent, around labor being so much more of another challenge. Then you got labor laws, heavy labor laws. You can't fire anyone. It's a fuck up. That's what I actually think about the South African business environment. I don't miss it at all. I don't miss it at all. I think it's complete bullshit. BE doesn't fucking work. Rich, I'm so proud of you for just giving the bird to the guys and fuck you. This isn't actually right. And how much longer must we all pay the price for it? It's rubbish.
You know what? I do think it was right. I think you're spot on. I honestly don't dispute 15 years of it, maybe even 20 years. We're coming up to 30 years, right? There just doesn't make sense anymore. There's a limitation. The other thing,
and whites are absolutely minority. I'm not doubting the fact that the bulk of the money still lives in the white economy. There's no question about that. Who has the cash? Old white people, for sure. But the fact is that they're I'll use the word punishing, but the government's punishing such a small minority now that I actually think that if they opened it up, it probably wouldn't make a hell of a difference.
So boys, that microphone coming in and out of focus in my mind.
Yeah.
So I think we landed the idea.
I tried everything. I crawled over there to move shit, but I couldn't get it. Yeah.
Next time we'll just drop all the branding altogether. But to answer your point, Brent, that experience though, and what I said to Spencer at lunch, I said, if you can build a business in Africa, you can build a business anywhere. And one of the interesting things was I had a a small business loans marketplace technology platform that we had built. And in that process, I was researching what was the impact of COVID on small business loans in the US. And I found this interesting report from this SBA, which basically issues shit tons of loans to businesses here. And basically there was this pyramid, and they broke down by revenue size the distribution of American businesses based on revenue. And so what I learned was that if you build a business that does just $1 million a year, you are in the top 10% of all businesses, period, public or privately owned. And I was like, holy fucking shit, my business does like $2.5 million and I'm sitting in Africa. So, Rich, you've built businesses that size. Brent, you also have businesses big, bigger than that even. And so I always remember that stat, because it's like, shit, that's actually the thing. If you can have $1 million a year business, you can pretty much do anything you want.
You're healthy. Yeah.
You're healthy, brother. You're good. And then
I want to say that even with the shitty exchange rate, I think we had 18 to the rand today or somewhere around there. That if you said to me, you have to go build an 18 million rand business, that doesn't sound like, I'm not saying it's easy, but that isn't incomprehensible by any means, right? Like, I think it's kind of like, that's an average size business. The guys that have got 100 million, 500 million businesses, those become in rands, those become big businesses. But $1 million as a revenue business is not exceptional, in my opinion.
No.
You know what I think one of the challenges is, and this is maybe something we can come back to, but I think that in order to build a $100 million business, you've got to be able to settle for building boring, repeatable business. And one of the kind of dichotomies of entrepreneurship is that we don't want to build boring businesses. So you make it harder for yourself because you want to kind of have fun with it. But I want to come back to something that Matt said earlier, because this is it's a thought piece that I've been working on. And it is that I think that one of the biggest challenges that South Africa faces on every level, one of the biggest solutions to fixing it is making it easier to fire people. So I think that because it's hard to fire people, it's hard to hire people. So I won't hire somebody, even if I had a 6-month run where I thought, I want a big client, let me hire lots of people, let me do this. I won't do it, because if I hire them and then we lose a client, I can't get rid of them. And it's really, really difficult. And it also means that we have to accept bad level work. It is so hard to get a poor performer out of your business. It's unacceptable. So what we've done is we've made it very, very comfortable to be a low performer. By being very comfortable being a low performer, these service levels go down because there's nothing at stake, right? So if you live in the United States and you're hired to do a job and you do your job at below the average, you will lose your job. So what happens is you have to do your job at average or above average. And as soon as that happens, average grows, right? So average grows. And so this funny self-fulfilling thing happens, but also this becomes exciting because then I can take a risk. I can be like, yes, that guy, there's something there. I'm not sure, but there's something there. Let me bring them in. I'll try them out for 3 or 4 months, 6 months. Let's see what it is. But in my context, we have to think long and hard of that and try wild around ways to turn them into contractors and things and not book them so often. And it's a fuck up. It's like a really, really creating. So when you talk about the unemployment, bizarrely, the tool designed to make unemployment harder has fucked unemployment. It's a government getting in the way of business and fucking it up, and we let them do it. Again, we need to turn our backs on that. We need to turn around as South African entrepreneurs and say, nobody's fighting. Nobody wants to fight. We should be allowed to fire people because you sound insensitive. It is the opposite. Being able to fire bad performers means that everybody in the world who wants to show up has more opportunity. I don't know I feel like you guys would agree, but this has got to change.
I think what you said was works in the inverse as well, right? So the average increasing, the average decreases as well, and it leads to terrible mediocrity. It also creates the problem of the A, B, and C team players. That everyone, if you only hire B and C's, your A's are going to leave. That becomes a problem.
Oh yes.
And the thing which frustrates me is that South Africa is a capitalist society with a socialist labor law, and the two cannot coexist. They cannot. And somehow, this is what's written into our very forward-thinking constitution. So we actually have amazing capitalist fundamentals in this country, except for that labor law piece. Like, that is a disaster. And it's
a disaster.
It's the core of a capitalist society, is the ability to hire talent and fire talent and hire the best talent. So it's this weird dichotomy in this country around the laws here. And unfortunately, Rich, the problem with that is that socialist piece is so embedded in the ruling party's constitution and belief structure that to remove that, we have to remove them from power. Like, there's no other way of that happening, because it's what the promise has been for the last 30 years. We will give you and keep you work. So I can't see that changing, unfortunately.
No, 100%. But anyway, it's inspiring that Matt has been able to, and again, it's not about shitting on South Africa. I'm a big fan of South Africa. It's an amazing country. It's just about, in the defense of an amazing country, we sometimes allow it to get away with its flaws. And it's only when you kind of leave and you're able to realize, oh, wait, shit, fuck, this doesn't have to be so hard. And just because I understand a lot of Matt's viewers are US-based and international, if nothing else, let this be a perspective on the fact that there are, there is some really, really amazing opportunities. And if nothing else, you can pat yourself on the back on the decision you've made to build a business there. It's super exciting. I'm jealous.
Yeah, the American dream is real, man. Like people are like, oh, it's dead. It doesn't exist anymore. It never existed. Like for me, coming from Africa and having nothing when I basically landed here on day one with a dream, like I can see that dream already becoming a reality much, much faster than I anticipated.
Can I tell you a better dream?
Yeah.
So the American dream is real, but dollars is real.
Is this the dream that you told me that you had last night with the clowns and the daffodils?
Just cut that part out, right? The dream for me, Matt, is build a US-based, dollar-based business, but spend your rands. I think that if you can live in the part of the world that Richard currently lives in the Western Cape, if you look at the property pricing compared to the States and compared to some of the bigger cities there, the lifestyle you can get for your dollars goes way further. And now I think we have the ability to earn dollars, but spend rands. And I actually think that for people who like potentially can't get on a plane and leave with ease, I'm preaching that hard, whether it's dollars, euros, or yen. I'm not fussy about it. But we're cheap. We actually are hardworking. I think that for most industries, we have some really good people, like there's really good skills. We're mostly on the good time zones for, East Coast, Europe,
East Coast,
and maybe Australia, like, the edge of Australia.
West Coast, Perth.
We don't want to do Australians. Yeah, we don't want to do work. Well, Perth is basically just an extension of South Africa.
It is South Africa. It's actually it's 4 ways extension 4. Listen, so, I buy that. And the other thing, by the way, that I think not enough people talk about, one of South Africa's unfair advantages is actually it's a better culture fit with America than it is with Africa. So when I speak to a lot of South African entrepreneurs and they say, "Oh yeah, we want to go do business in Africa," it's bizarre because actually you would be more understood in many ways doing business, whether you're black or white, but if you're a South African person, doing business in America or Europe would be more culturally easier than doing business in
Africa.
In Africa. So what happens is I found our US clients, 80% of our 30% international work comes from the US. And it's because other than our accents, we think and act like Americans. So it's a very, very easy fit in terms of how to do things. And I think part of the reason for that is that we grew up watching American television. And I know that might seem like an oversimplification.
I'm looking at behind your screen. I'm going is you're wearing an American cap, you've got skateboards behind you. The American culture is what we were taught. We weren't taught European culture or Eastern culture. We were taught American culture. So we are very Americanized in a lot of what we do, how we think, and the way we run our businesses. If you think about all the content you initially ever read or saw was always American content around how to run a business. Always. It was never the Asian way to build a $1 billion business. We never saw that. We still haven't seen that. So I think that you're right. There's a huge amount of similarity to the American culture. I think we just lost our host, which is very interesting. I mean, this is professional as hell.
So I had to run for a second. You know what, Tom? I recently moved back to Mac. And the reason I moved back to Mac is an interesting side. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but it's really interesting. I think what he's doing, so here's my guess. He's moving his green screen so he can turn his background off as well. In 3, 2,
Hold on, wait. How the fuck do you turn it off?
Okay, but I was right. That is what he was doing.
Yeah.
But I switched recently back. So I've been on PC for maybe a decade now. I moved from Mac on my entire career back to PC, and I loved it. And actually, I would still argue there's a lot of things that are better about it. But I was having an argument with Jonathan Tricker, one of the guys we go snowboarding with, a good mate of mine. And his argument was very simple. His argument was very simple. It was that you cannot beat the Apple battery. And the Mac battery is so good that I don't think I've forgot to plug it in since yesterday. And so I actually have to crawl away just now because I realized, I hadn't unpacked my battery charger from my backpack, and it finally gave me a warning. Whereas I had a razor blade, and honestly, I wouldn't have lasted a 2-hour flight with that thing. This thing Satan is inside my machine, creating electricity. I don't know how the fuck they do it.
Okay, now I feel like I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay, you have to
Matt's fancy background to watch with my lighting shift.
Oh my god, that's so porno.
Hey, I used to be a lighting designer in my youth. Building an office at home allowed me to play with lighting again.
Just for everyone's information, if you're catching this on audio, he's also got a smoke machine in there.
Yes. Well, wait a minute. You guys don't have a smoke machine in your office.
Yeah, before every sales call, just fucking, there you go, bitch. Take it on.
So funny aside. So the problem is I turn it on, then I turn it off because I came with a stupid little remote that has never worked. And so it runs out of smoke halfway through. So I was on Take-A-Lot trying to find a plug with a remote right before the call. I was like, this is bullshit. I want to be able to have my smoke on demand. I could wire it into DMX so that I can still run off my lighting controller as well. But for now, I haven't figured that all out.
I thought I had a cool studio, but now I don't.
Well, this is more playful. I can play with mine.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So
Brent, you gotta put your glasses on, bro, because you fuck with your logo when you don't wear your glasses.
Yeah, that's
but I can't. It's difficult.
Oh yes.
Yes, man.
That's the guy.
Right.
So listen.
Okay, can I throw another topic in here?
Yeah.
It's a little bit of an old white man aggravation topic. I'm tired of it's not this
Matt's
rich. No.
Still young. Matt, how old are you
How
at the moment?
Matt?
I'm turning 44 on the 24th.
Fuck, he looks good, eh? He looks good.
Yeah, he really does. I actually didn't realize. I thought honestly, I thought when you said I'm turning, I thought you were going to say 40.
Oh, 40, really? Me too. No, genuinely, hey.
Huh.
Well done.
Oh, thanks.
Good job. Good job. I hit 50 next year.
Fuck.
Yeah, I'm a year and a half away from that. I mean, it's interesting because I just had a call before this with the financial advisor talking about wrapped endowments and retirement funds offshore. And he gave me the whole presentation. And then he went, how old are you? So I said, I'm 48, turning 49. He goes, oh, this whole thing was a waste because you can't do this till you're 50. And it's like, oh, that was a waste of my time. You should have asked the question.
It's also
first.
an insult because he thought you were 50. So you want to leave the hey, fuck you, man.
Well, that's the first thing is that firstly, I look older than I am, which is a problem. And secondly, fuck, I'm going to be 50 soon. Like I'm now eligible for retirement products. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's frightening. Yeah. Okay. Can I go back to my old man rant? I'm tired, and Rich and I had this conversation offline a different time, but I'm a little bit tired of all this woke bullshit. And we are quite protected in South Africa compared to what I'm seeing in Europe and the States. I think it's way more sort of radical, the way I would use the word, than it is here. But I think it's just gone too far. And I've either lost touch, and maybe I've just become irrelevant and I don't understand what the hell is going on. Or I think that there's this weird underlying movement that is pushing a narrative beyond its sensible boundaries. I don't know how else to say it, but I'm frustrated. So I'm looking at two relatively younger white dudes and going, and am I the only one losing my mind here? Or do I feel like pronounism has gone too far? Like, what are your thoughts?
Maddie? I've got thoughts on this thing, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, I'll do the middle ground one. Well, firstly, I don't understand it. So I should probably reserve judgment of anyone who, is going through their shit or whatever. But I don't understand it. Like, I don't get binary. I don't get weird pronoun things. And like, I'm all for equality. And I keep having this conversation with my wife, actually, because sometimes it's nice to aspire to an ideal. And I think as humans, we have reality and we have ideals, and we have expectations, and then we have, reality. And sometimes it's not possible for equality to exist. And obviously context is the big word here. So as an example, my wife wants to stop working. So I said, cool. Well, if you stop working, then some things need to change. Like, I need to need more time to focus on the business, because that's our only, income earner. So, but, and if you, and in relationships, especially, sometimes equality cannot happen. You can aspire there, but if you change the context, like, I know a guy, one of my clients, Ben Lyons, runs a $400 million a year property fund, and his wife has never worked. So he has a complete pink slip to focus on his business whenever he wants. So I was on a phone with him on Sunday morning at 7:30 last week. He was driving out to Myrtle Beach or something in North Carolina, going on holiday, but he works and he doesn't get shit for it, because he's the guy that provides the bread. And so the wife has just looked after the children, blah, blah, blah. And that's the way it's always been. And I guess, I know it was interesting, because I was like, so if that's the way it's always been, then it's probably okay. But if you're in a situation with your partner where you were both working and then one stops, and then the expectation is, especially when you have kids, that everything must remain the same, it's not fucking that's not reality. That's an expectation that doesn't exist. So going back to the work thing, I don't see enough of it here in the business world, quite frankly. It's more what people are talking about on social media, like Jordan Peterson and these guys and whatever. But I, as I said, I don't understand it. I don't know anyone that thinks that he's a she. I saw on social that in Holland this week, that the lady or the man, the transgender person, it was the first time that one, Miss Holland or whatever the case is. I have a thing. I don't agree with having a man who sees himself as a woman competing in sport against other women. Like, that's fucking bullshit. Agreed. And people have lost their mind if they think that that's fine. And I see a lot of, and this is the conversation, like, if you identify if you're a man and you identify as a woman, how can you compete? What does that mean for the Olympics? You know what I mean? It's not fair. That's not equality. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know enough of it. I only think about equality in the sense of what I see in the business world and in my own life. And I think that it's context. You change the context, you changed everything.
So I think for me, it's a just 1 second, Rich. It's a fear-based thing, right? Is that they've created the sense of in the world that I'm living in, and some of the younger talent, young creative space, they've created fear for me to be able to say anything. And I'm scared to even comment or like stuff potentially, because it's a little bit risky. But it feels, and maybe it's exacerbated in South Africa, because there's been such a big racist undertone for so many years, that if you say the wrong racist slur, like in this country, it's horrific. And I think in my mind, what I'm doing is I'm applying that level of fear of going, God forbid I say the wrong thing around a different race, and not being racist, but just, the wrong thing. I'm applying the same logic to the pronoun discussion. And I'm trying to work out whether I'm being irrational. And the last thing for me is I'm trying to understand what's law versus what's norm. So you're talking about like patriarchal societies, that's a norm, right? Like, it's been the norm for a long time. It's not the law. No one says you have to do that, you can change. And what's happened now is that if people are looking for a new norm around, identifying as, I'm okay with that. If you're looking for a new norm, cool. But it's not the law. You cannot tell me what I can and can't think or how I should behave. That's a law. And I don't prescribe to it like that. So I'm trying to work out whether it's going to find a neutral balance, whether it's just extreme now and will come back a bit. And I know Rich and I had this chat, and it's top of mind since we spoke about it last. So like, I'm testing my thinking with other people to see where they are. That's what I'm trying to understand.
So my take is that's the most important thing. So what we've lost is nuance. There's one observation I want to make, Brent. You said you don't know if it's different in South Africa. I think there's a different shared context that we exist in that makes it different than Matt. Matt said earlier on that he's tapped out of social media. What my aha moment now when I was listening to Matt was, fuck, maybe it's not as big as we think it is. Maybe it's big because in the world of social media, it's big, but actually it's not big in dinner parties, and it's not big. You know, I had a trans person join a call the other day, to look at joining our speaker program, and it was incredible. And she's amazing, and I will give her all her pronouns and all her things at an individual level, and she's, you know, in all those things, I have no problem with it. Individually, it's not even a difficult thing. Like, we all treat people with respect. We're not deuses. So if somebody comes up there and they present a certain way and they want to be treated a certain way, you do that, right? So, and nobody's forcing you to do it. It's just, you know, why would you be there? They seem like a really cool person and you want people to be happy. But when you look at things at a macro level on social media, everything gets blown out of proportion, and we get scared of violent, loud strangers. Whereas Matt, having tapped out of social media for a year, that's not his lens. So his lens is real live humans. And so maybe what's happened is we think that something's big in the world when actually it's just big on the internet. And the internet is not the world. And as soon as we realize that the internet is not the world, it's just a fucking marketing channel, because that's all we're scared of. Nobody's scared of anything. There is no social media. Social media is a complete utter, that we got to take away the word social and replace it with the word marketing. It's all marketing media. And as soon as you separate that idea, because what Matt is post-marketing media growth, marketing. So he has built a different channel for marketing his business and his amplifying his authority that isn't social media. And so by doing that, he doesn't actually have to give a shit about this, which I think is incredible. Like, there was such an aha moment for me. I was like, holy shit, that's how you fix it. If you want to not worry about what people say about you on social media, get the fuck off social media. So one observation.
I think, yeah, I mean, I've learned, I think, certainly in the last year, how much I dislike social media. I've learned, also become self-aware around, and I think it probably had a lot to do with the shit I've been taking on social media, you know, about a year ago.
Why? What happened? You briefly touched on it.
People just commenting, like, you know, taking their frustration to social media, trying to basically damage my reputation, you know. So you do what you can on social media to manage it. You be transparent, you apologize, you do whatever you have to do, and you be respectful. But if they want to continue to you know, do say the things they want to say and think the things they want to think, well, fuck them. And there's nothing you can do about it. So social media,
we'll come to it in a second. I had people emailing my staff saying, how can you work for such a bigoted guy, trying to get people to resign from my company. Really? I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, if you want to, but yeah.
So the thing, social media is a great amplification tool. It's a great way to reach people, obviously. But other than that, to engage in conversation or you know, dialogue on social media, especially at scale, is just a ridiculous thing to try and manage. And so what I've learned, having now built a business, is really that your power sits with you and your personal brand and channels that you own. That's it. And you get more leverage off building things that you own entirely and then using social media to leverage what you built, rather than try and build something on social and then try and bring it back. That's much harder. And I've done both. And, you know, like I have a perspective on media that no one else is thinking about. And when I share it, they go, oh shit, that's really different. And that's when I can commercialize things. But I'm really not a big fan on social, you know, and I don't understand why people have these budgets for social media. It's just like, it's a content hungry machine that never dies, you know, and you have to pay to build, you have to pay to reach, you have to pay. And for what end? So unless you really have something that you can commercialize, right? Like, it's great to be famous, but I've also been famous and broke at the same time, you know? So you have to think, for me personally, it's about building something that you own, having a perspective that's different, and then working with people to have what you have. Anyway, that's what I see working. I'm not a big fan.
So Rich, it's funny because I'm now, you know, thinking about this with a bit of freedom of time and space. I agree. The bulk of the noise is social and predominantly Twitter, number one. And the second thing for me is that when I think about my actual living physical space, the only place that I've seen it recently is one or two big retailers having it like as a campaign where it's like, we support transgender, or we support this. And the reality is that it's in my face. That I don't take offense. It doesn't really bother me. I'm not going to not shop there or shop there because of their campaign. So the reality for me maybe is just be looser with my opinions, and not I have no opinion that's necessarily very strongly held against any of these things, but be looser with it. And then if I get real world pushback, then I know that I've reached some kind of boundary, and maybe that's just the way I need to live again. Just engage with real people and realize what those networks and communities look like. Sort of.
Okay, except that what's tolerated is replicated. Okay, so at some point, so while I'm not affected, why I'm not directly impacted or individually impacted by certain policies, I am affected by them. And the problem is this death of honesty. So I hold views on all of these issues. For example, I agree with you guys that I don't think that trans women should compete in women's sports. I think that we're confusing fairness with equality. Okay, so if I go and I take tomorrow, if I want to be buff as fuck, and I take a whole bunch of steroids, okay, I can't go and compete in the average gi jiu-jitsu tournament because they don't allow steroids. Now I can turn around and say, no, that's not fair because my identity is like, this is a big deal for me. I want to be a big bulky person. And I understand this is slightly different because there's a lot more to choosing to be trans than there is choosing to be that. Unfortunately, life is compromises. So, but it's not fair. There's nothing fucking fair about it. The number one, privilege. It's amazing how much shit I get from North Americans. We've just been speaking about it slightly, but North American privilege is up there beyond almost everything else. You do not realize how privileged you are to live in North America and what a privilege it actually is. You should know that by the amount of people that want to immigrate there, but it is a real privilege to live where you live. And it's, the fact is, again, 100 businesses in Africa with that, what was the number I met?
Yeah,
100
versus 12,000, right? So that just gives you some sense of it. So it's not fair. I think I'm a smart guy. I think, honestly, if I grew up in San Francisco in the time that I grew up now, I honestly think that I could have been, I remember saying to Brent once, I feel like being an ex-billionaire. Yeah, I want to give it away, but I need to make it first. And I figured I should do that. And I actually back myself enough. I back all of us that we could have been really, really, really in the inner circle, super successful if we were there. So I'm not bitter. Life isn't fair.
There's a Pearl Jam song, and the lyrics is, he won the lottery by being born. And he was talking about being a white male born in California in the mid-60s. And he goes, if you were a white male born in that not province, state, in that period of time, the probability of hitting a good university and being poached by Morgan Stanley and living a great life was like exponential. It was difficult to cock that up. And I think that in this country, for a long time, white male was given a privilege as well, for sure. But now I think that as a country and as a continent, we look to those bastions like the States of it's so much easier to live in a world where you can flush the toilet because there's water.
This is also something else's turn. Just to finish this thought, I also think though I have no problem with the Miss Netherlands thing personally, because I don't think other than the fact that maybe we could make an argument that currently on trend is trans people. That's not disparaging. It's just the fucking truth. I think that the world is cycles. And if you represent the cycle that people are buying at the time, you get chosen. So again, it wasn't that it was a physical, biological advantage that somebody had that made them win it. You could absolutely make the argument you don't agree with it, but it's a fucking beauty pageant, right? So it's
but that's really interesting, right? Because if you think about supermodels from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, they looked different, right? They went through phases of looking traditional, then slightly weird, and then we went for completely non-pretty people. That was the trend. So in the same vein, to go if the trend or the visual comfort zone, I don't know what the right language is, for that person to win that because they look like that today, I don't disagree. But the unfair advantage I believe he had was because there was a wave of people going, it's the right thing to do. We need to jump on that bus. And that's probably the social media narrative, potentially.
So perhaps, and again, but again, it's not fair. It's not fair for anyone. So sometimes we can't have it both ways. Yeah, but we just can't have it both ways. So sometimes it's fair for the one group, sometimes it's fair for the other group.
But the other thing which is important here is that of those 10 people, besides the 9 that lost, who cares? Like, does it really affect your life? Does it actually make any difference to anyone? No. The 9 runners up, they may have a problem with this, right? And maybe rightly so. But actually, it doesn't affect my life in the slightest that happened.
In a beauty pageant, it's safe to say that for a few years, we may have trans people winning. And then even though there will still be trans people competing, it will just normalize. It won't be on trend anymore, it'll normalize. However, in sports, it's fundamentally different. Because in sport, if there is one trans woman in a female sport category, at any given point in history, they will win for the most part. And so that becomes problematic, and that is something worth, because this now becomes not an issue of what I care about, it becomes an issue of, well, we've got to worry about women's rights as well. Okay, so that becomes a different thing. I also, at some point, I want to chat about division of labor, to Matt's points about work, but we can maybe come back to that after. How are we doing in the trans thing?
So I just wanted to add one thing in there. So my son and my daughter were
or daughter or son.
Exactly. But my son Franklin, he wouldn't give Reagan the PlayStation controller because I said to him, look,
listen, that's really how you got your green card. You have children named against you.
I mean, that just clinched the deal. I was like, fuck, I'm not going to take any chances with that one. But anyway, so and I said, Franklin, put on 2-player for Reagan, so she can also play. Otherwise, she goes and she bothers mom. And he lost his shit, and he said, "It's not fair." And I said to him, Franklin, sometimes what's right is more important than what's fair. And in the context of what we've been talking about, the right thing is always the right thing. If it's a transgender person winning the Dutch beauty pageant competition, fuck yes, great, congratulations. I have no problem with that. But what's not right is a man competing in a woman's just because he says he's a fucking woman or he identifies as one. You see, so I think for me, it's always making the choice around what's right in a specific context, because sometimes life is not fair. It cannot always be equal. That's what I was trying to say. But you have to also know, well, what's the right thing in this moment in time?
And I guess it will normalize, right? So what will happen is unfortunate. So in the short term, because there is definitely some men just taking the piss, right? There's some men who simply just want to see if they can do this to win because it's on vogue. There's 2 victims here. Victim number 1 is the woman. And victim number 2 is actual trans people who are having to deal with other people hijacking their, lifelong struggle as because it's on trend and these people want to take advantage, because some people are just assholes, right? So that's something else there. However, what's going to happen is at some point we're going to create open categories where anyone can compete and nobody will take away. We're going to have 3. We're going to have, women's category, males category, and open category where anyone can compete. And yes, some people might say, well, that's not completely, well, unfortunately, that's just the way, we have to be as fair as we can to everyone. And and I love that line, Matt. What's right is not always fair. And it's true. But also, again, nobody was ever promised fairness. We're fucking animals living in a jungle. We're mammals living in a jungle, right? The only thing that makes us different from deer getting eaten by lions is that we can, say words.
Communicate.
So, that we can communicate. So that's it. We're also just one of the mammals in the jungle. It should be the fact it's more fair for us than any other species on the planet, right? And it's more fair now than at any other time in human history, right? So we're doing fucking well. But we're so hell-bent on complaining about what we have not got there yet. Give it a minute.
Cool. I want to hear your story about someone mailing your staff telling you that you're a bigot.
Okay. So I'm a member of an organization. So for people who don't know, I own a presentation business. We help people be more persuasive communicators. And we work with speakers and presenters. And so we're a member of it. And it's like, if that sounds like a niche, it is, right? A niche. Not many people want to do this. It was actually the reason I chose to do that is it was the field in kind of design skills that nobody wanted, so we took it. So I'm a member of a small organization called the Presentation Guild. And it's a really cool organization for presentation professionals, about 200 of us around the world, to come and talk about presentation-related things. And most of us are presentation, strategists or designers or business owners. It's not really speakers, it's more people, industries, service providers. Anyway, so I'm going on the Slack channel one day and I see, and this sounds like a request that shouldn't have bothered me, but I see a request and the request says this: can we please create a safe space for LGBTQ+, POC, and women? So let's categorize here. Can we please create a safe space for every single category of human being that is not simultaneously straight, white, and male? So I went on, I said, wait, is that what you're asking for? Are you asking for a group for people who are not straight, white, and male? That sounds like what you asked for. Anybody else on the planet who's not straight, white, and male at the same time? And she said, and this comment is the reason we need it. So I took a screenshot of that, blurred out names, and put it online and said, hold on a second. This is inclusion. This doesn't make sense. Well, I got what the internet would refer to as ratioed. So I had one person jump on and say, fuck you. That was a comment. It was a stranger I'd never met. And I said, and so I went onto their profile, and their profile said, be nice to everyone, blah, 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 blah. And so I took a screenshot and I said, I don't take any offense from hypocrites. So then they came back and said, fuck you again, or something like this. And then I turned around and said, hey, listen, so I'm a vegan. And, there's nothing worse in the world than sanctimonious asshole vegans. They do more damage than good, right? They just piss everybody off. I said, you're the sanctimonious vegan of this argument. And then he came back and said, oh, did you just call a gay, Asian, trans person an asshole? And I was like, no, dickhead, I called you an asshole. Anyway, so this person fucking called the world on me. Hundreds of comments, so people were turning around. And so basically, so we have a big problem here, and I think we need to address it. So first thing everybody said is I've got to decenter myself. So I've got to move myself in the center because I represent a majority. That is a very, very North American point of view. I'm 7% of the country that I live in is white people, right? So I'm not a majority in that way. We maybe to some degree have more financial wealth, and I totally get that. We're not the richest. That's now gone from a different set. But what I recognized when I went through this whole thing is actually, because I asked people, and the number one thing that they came back to is they said they don't feel safe. So we do not feel safe around you. And I said, that's funny, because if we have a look at this thing, if you're a gay person, okay, so you're not straight, well, are you safer in typically white patriarchy countries today, or are you safer in any other race of countries? So if we put gay people in Asia or the Middle East or Africa, there's a lot of countries in which being gay is illegal. It is literally your life is at risk. Then, so that's a problem. And then I turned around and said to people like, for example, if you were a woman, if you were walking alone, in what neighborhoods would you voluntarily walk in? If we were to break this down maybe by race. And of course, I understand that there are social, economic, historical reasons that people feel safer in some neighborhoods than others. But certainly, wouldn't be that people felt most at risk in, typically white neighborhoods. And then the second thing I thought is, as women, is I thought, well, women, you're also straight and white. You don't get to a free pass from the problems of our forefathers. If we are suffering sins of our forefathers, whether you're gay or straight today, right, you have to suck it all up. So what is happening is we're giving people that have a single trait a free pass, and only people who have all the traits are we making them carry the load of all the forefathers. If you benefit from the privilege of the generations before, you don't get to be in the fucking out group, right? You are part of the in group is going to take the heat. The second thing that I realized out of this is the irony of the whole thing is that what we're doing is this is a case of people attacking the liberators, because the countries in the world that were the first to liberate the freedoms are the ones who are being attacked back the most, because we cannot have that attack. In some of the Asian countries, you go to China and you talk about, you go and fight, go to Uganda and talk about gay rights and have that fight there. And it's just not an issue, right? You cannot have that fight there. So we're attacking the people that liberated. And a great example of this at the moment is the argument around reparations for the slave trade. No one's going to Nigeria where there are still fucking indentured servitudes, fucking slaves today, and asking for reparations. They're going to Britain, where Wilberforce fought hard to try and downfall slavery. And I think this is a problem. So I'm flirting with the idea of writing a book called Unclusion, which talks about the idea that the role for inclusion is directed at the wrong thing. The only way that we can build a truly inclusive society is if we do not punish a single group. And the only way that we can do it is if at some point we understand that we cannot repair the past. We can only curate the future. And we need to unite in our idea of building a better future. And the only way we can do that is if we understand that nobody can take responsibility for the sins of their forefathers. Rant over. But that's my thought. Okay. So that's what happened.
I want to go back to the introduction that I gave Richard, right? So the one thing that I did forget about is that I don't know anyone that's created more words in the English language, which are new words, than Richard Mulholland, okay? But the thing which I want to say is that what he tends to do is he creates words like inclusion, which I think is not a real word, and then someone else is going to use it on the book before him, and then he gets pissed off going, that was my idea, I used it. I'm going, Rich, go and register that today, right? Yeah. Own it, inclusion.com, whatever that takes, go and own it, because you're going to lose it. Someone's going to hear this, and they're going to leapfrog this, and then you're going to be pissed.
Well, you know what? Like you said, shiny pennies. Brent,
the .com's available.
As my business coach, is this what I should be looking for? Is the .com?
Yeah, the inclusion.com is available.
Oh, thanks. You grab it for me, mate. If you have a thing.
Hey, well, he's got some dollars lying around. We can't afford it in rand. You buy it.
Yeah, it's like a house payment for me.
Yeah. So then this guy, so then who mailed your team? Is it one of the guys?
So what happened is this guy then, doxed us basically. This is the guy's company. This is the guy's staff. Here are staff members, and started tagging people and saying, how can you work for this transphobic bigot and homophobic bigot? And actually, I'm genuinely not anything phobic person. To go to another rant, and it's a talk I did on the gathering, the biggest fuck up in the world that we have today is you have to buy your ideals wholesale. So if I see a 20-year-old walking around a shopping mall wearing a mask, I instantly understand what their views are on abortion and gun control, right? So they didn't decide to have one point of view. When they had that point of view, they bought every point of view. And the reason is, at some point, and I think this is an American thing, but it's become a world thing because we bought it from America, is we confused values with politics. So we have to own all the opinions. But you see, like I said, so I hold, I'm a vegan, which doesn't really generally sit with the right. What else? So I don't agree in gender affirming care for minors, which sits me in the right. But then, like, I'm pro-abortion up to a point, which basically everybody hates me for, because there needs to be, you cannot be pro-abortion in this side, and there can't be a point, just it's somebody's body, just, whenever they want to, they can, kill the fetus. So I think what we need to do is bring back nuance. What we've lost, and I said this at the beginning, is we've allowed nuance to go, and we've had to pick sides, but there is no sides. There's only individual issues that should all be measured individually, and we've lost that. And we're not allowed to do that because we're scared. So what this has meant is that we live in a post-honesty world. We live in a world where honesty is the victim, because every single person I speak to, I'll say something, they won't say, by the way, on social media in that post, everyone said, oh, you've been ratioed, because the only people who were commenting were hating me. Everybody else was WhatsApping me and DMing me. All the support was private and all the hate was public. So that's what happens, is we forced people into the private channels. I definitely got more support for that post than disdain, but all the support was private, because people are scared to speak up because of the machine that will punish them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got I agree with so much of what you said. It's another reason why I hate social media, is because there's no one's caring about the nuance. They're just caring about their point of view, and you can't have an effective dialogue in that context. It's just, you can't do it, but you can if you fucking go to therapy, but I think books like Inclusion, if and when you do it, I think are important books because they share a different perspective. And what Brent was saying up front, Rich, was that you assimilate much, much better than a lot of people do. And then you're able to language around it so that it gets people's attention. That's what makes you brilliant.
But also the patience to do the research, right? Like Rich may or may not be any more a raging atheist. At one point in time, I would classify him as a raging atheist, but he was a raging atheist that I think took enough time to understand the religious sides as well. So like, you can't pick a fight with him because he's going, oh, like, I'm an atheist, I haven't read the Bible. So don't pick a fight with me because I have no real perspective of the other side, right? I just don't. So it's not fair. Where Richard, this sounds like the Richard show, right? Like we're kissing ass here, but the ability to have an argument where you can actually argue both sides and understand both sides and actually have some level of data to argue. That's why you don't fight with Richard, because he will eat you if you don't know if you don't know the Quran and the Bible and the Siddur and all the things. You can't have a fight with him about atheism because you're going to lose. And I think that's also important in terms of picking an argument. Everyone is picking an argument with a very one-dimensional point of view, and they're not letting go of that point of view, and they haven't taken the time to explore the other perspective, and therefore I'm right and you're wrong, and there's no way of actually arguing with an idiot. Like it's become a problem.
What do you think of Jordan Peterson?
Me?
Both of you, yeah.
So I think he's a genius, okay? It doesn't mean I agree with everything he says. I think that Jordan Peterson will eat Richard Mulholland for lunch in an argument, because I don't see anyone in the world who's managed to formulate a structure to pick an argument and win it, even if he knows he's wrong. He's able to use his power of language, the vast knowledge that he's got, especially from the psychology side, to apply it in a way that no matter who he speaks to, they feel like an idiot. So I think he's a genius from that perspective, only from that perspective. A lot of his opinion, I think, is flawed from my perspective. And unfortunately, and this is the atheist again, is that a lot of his opinion is informed by religious point of view. So like his base is not my base, and I'm struggling there a bit. But do I think that he's got incredible vocab? Do I think he's got ability to hold an audience? Can he communicate incredibly effectively? I think so. And maybe those are things that I aspire to. So that's why I look up to him. Maybe because I feel like I'm weak in some of those elements. That's my own bias. But he's very strongly opinionated on certain things. I think that unnecessarily so, potentially. Richard, you've got a strong opinion. I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I think he is. There's actually a lot of stuff he says that I agree with. Right? I think he's one of the best interviewees in the world. Like you said, I wouldn't want to go head to head with him on an interview on his topic. So that's the problem, right? It's like everybody jumping in with Hoist Gracie. If you don't know jiu-jitsu, you remember the old original UFC 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. You got a whole bunch of people who are the best in their field jumping in with a guy who's the best in jiu-jitsu. They didn't know any jiu-jitsu and they lost. And so that, I think that was, that's why he wins. You're fighting him with his fight. Okay, so you're fighting an Olympic athlete in their sport. Stupid fucking people. Okay, so that's the first thing. I don't think he's a good speaker. And do you guys know Dan Brown, the author?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he wrote the Da Vinci Code.
I've read the books. Yeah.
Okay, so I read like 60 books a year, most of them fiction, because I love reading books. Dan Brown is the fiction author for people who don't like fiction. So if you read one book a year on your Christmas holiday, you'll like a Dan Brown book. I think Jordan Peterson is the intellectual giant for intellectual small people. I think that he is the popular culture, he is the Dan Brown of intellectual discussion. And what he does is he baffles with bullshit. So I saw this great debate with Jordan Peterson with Stephen Fry. And at first they were discussing religion, and I was watching it, and I wrote a comment on it, and the comment was, this is interesting, because one person says quite simple things in a very convoluted way, and the other person says very convoluted things in a simple way. Jordan Peterson will say the sentence, we should go out for dinner, in a way that says, in human beings, when we decide to, masticulate our, proteins in such a, with only by the what the fuck are you saying, bro? Whereas Stephen Fry would take this big, broad concept of religion and say, it's like when a butterfly flies over, and you get it. And as a communicator, I'm way more Team Fry. The skill is making shit simple. Jordan Peterson sounds smart because he uses big words. And I think that's a cheap trick. I don't think he's not smart. I think he's fucking clever, right? And I love some of his ideas, and I think he's done wonders for the world, actually. He's had fights that needed to be had. But while I back him as an arguer, when I watch his talks, I think he's not very good.
But I'll answer the question, right? The thing about, before you jump in there, Matt, the thing which is interesting to me is that if you think about who he is and where he came from being a professor or a psychologist professor to what he's done, it's the same argument to some degree of, well, do you think Kim Kardashian is smart? And it's like, well, not intellectually, but for whatever reason, she's managed to build this behemoth empire and make money from a business perspective. Same as a kid, same as a lot of people. Like, is she smart? She can't be that stupid, right?
She must be smart. I don't know why I couldn't pick her out in a crowd. She must be smart.
But there's an argument to this, right? Is that even if he's pontificating and he knows that he's doing it beyond what he needs to do, he's managed to gain a massive audience and monetize that and have an impact. So there's something about that which I find remarkable. Like, good speaker or not good speaker. Yeah.
So is Dan Brown. And that's my point, is I'm not taking anything away. The world needs popular fiction, popular icons, right? Yeah, certain art is more popular. And I just think Jordan Peterson represents the everyman's intellectual, which is a very important role. But I don't think that he is the behemoth that people necessarily think he is intellectually. I just think that, and I think a lot of that comes down to the marketing of, he says things that sound really smart. But I think when we could run clips of his and play them back and if you turn around and took any one of his transcripts, let this be a challenge for you. Take a transcript, find a thing, and then pop it into ChatGPT and say
I was going to say, make it simple.
Yeah, make it simple. And to me, that's the skill. The skill of communication is not to make yourself sound smart, but to make the people listening to you smarter. And the way you make the people you're listening to smarter is you say things in better ways that they can comprehend. His entire job is to make you believe that he is clever. Whereas most communicators' entire job is to make the people they are speaking to smarter.
Well
Good
said.
one.
Guys, very quickly on AI, because this is something that came up earlier that I wanted to say to you. And we were talking about, like, when you were saying about the, atheism, and I always read the other side, and I do always try to look for the other side of the arguments, and that's how I get nuance, right? That is how I get that, because I think I do understand it. One of my favorite AI tools, just if we've not spoken about it at the moment, is Reword. Have you guys tried it?
No.
REWORD. So I'll tell you why I love it. So first of all, my view on AI is that I've got a few views that I think that we don't think about it. I think it should be seen as an augmented intelligence, not an artificial intelligence. We need to not think about it as an expert worker, but as an intern, right? And if we understand that, then we feel better about it. That's the first thing. The second thing is I fucking love writing. I didn't go to a ghostwriter. I wrote my books because I want people to read them to sound like, hey, that sounds like a lunch with Rich, right? So I don't want AI to do that for me, but I still want AI because I'm lazy as fuck. So Reword, what it does is it works like a publishing assistant. So as you're writing, it posts questions that you maybe haven't thought of. So you can be writing and you can say, hey, find me a counter argument to this. What have I missed that my audience would be wanting to hear by this stage? And it will come back and say to you, well, you haven't really covered this. Or you can be writing and it will say, find me cool expert quotations on this topic. And it kind of gives you some sample ones that you could be using, but you can basically write anything. So one of the ones I always ask for is, what is the counter argument to what I'm saying? Am I right? Or is my opinion validatable? And can you find me data for this? And so it's naturally doing that because it's always measuring the context of what you're writing. And then, the other thing I asked for is, what have I missed? What am I not covering here? Where is my blind spot? And it says, your blind spot is this. You haven't considered this. Fucking what a time to be alive. So people are using it to do the work instead of doing it to help you do the work. And I think that's really exciting for me.
And for Rich's for 20% discount, just click the link in the top right hand corner. It's
I actually do have an affiliate code. I do have an affiliate on that one, but this one's for free. You don't even have to click my affiliate link. Because I genuinely want people to understand. I actually mailed the guy. I think his price point is too high for what it is. It's $49. But I don't know if you're looking at it now, Matt, but it's a sexy UI. It's super nice to work inside of. My other favorite thing about it. So what you can do, one of my challenges was sometimes you do use AI to write stuff. The problem is it doesn't sound like you. So its only data set that it uses to generate text is your own writing. So when you sign up, you submit all your writing or transcripts of your text into it. So when you do paste something that is AI generated, that it gives you something, then you say, rewrite this. And it tries to rewrite it as best as it can to sound like how you would say it. I don't use that function a lot, but I love it. But right now, because I'm 3 months into it, but once I put 500 articles into that thing, it'll be really, really good at writing like Rich, which I think is super cool. Talk about legacy. So then what happens is eventually what will happen is in the future, it will allow me to create this as a legacy engine. And it will allow me to turn around and say, write like Rich. And so if my kids want to write like I would write or think like I would think, they can actually do things there, which I'm so excited about that.
That's amazing.
This is legacy.
It's scary.
It's very cool.
Amazing.
I think we're going to witness the democratization of authorship or publishing or self-publishing. It's happening already.
For sure. And it's input dependent, right? So if you have a good idea, it can help you write it. The problem is most people are using it to write. Why I'm not scared about it at all is everyone is asking AI, all these AI LinkedIn posts, they're going and saying, hey, write me something on purpose. And you're getting fucking spewed out Simon Sinek shit that is on narrative. The first thing we work with speakers in our public speaking program is, the first thing is we make them write a counter narrative. If you do not have a unique point of view about something that is different to the norm, you do not have a speech. You need to have a counter narrative. And so you've got to think through your thoughts and think, oh, am I saying what they're saying? Well, then, don't bother saying it. And right now, these AI tools are just spewing out people saying, hey, write me an article on communication and purpose. And you're getting rubbish.
Terrible.
Brent, are you itching to leave?
I'm itching to leave. I'm old. I need a warm bed and 8 hours sleep.
I also have jiu-jitsu at 6, so I've got to go downstairs, put on my gi, and get to class, which is 10 minutes away. But I'm okay. But I would honestly have done this for another 4 hours. This is some Joe Rogan style shit.
We should do this once a month and have it standing in the diaries.
I love that.
I'd fucking love it. We'll get so deep. It'll be amazing.
Yeah, we should have a fourth person on here, just for fun.
Like you know what I'd like to ask for? The fourth person should be a swinger. You should change because
swinger.
Well, also, so we can all fuck. But the fourth person should be somebody that evolves and changes, because it's like having a different spice every time, a different person in the mix.
Yes.
And so that just changes the group dynamic each time. Yeah. Otherwise, we fall into this thing.
Yeah, we fall into groupthink.
Yeah.
Very good. I like it.
Well, gents, enjoy your evening. I'm about to get started on my day, but it's great seeing you. Appreciate you both. You mean a lot to me, and thanks for being on the show.
And congrats for your imminently massive success. That's amazing. Hey?
I am so stoked, and not even a little bit surprised. Not even a tiny bit surprised. Well done, man.
All right.
Thanks, so stoked for you.
Appreciate you so much.